Oops. No, I don't want to end. Okay, I don't want to end. I want to start. Good morning to my friends. Happy Saturday. Matt Hooper, I've never seen you before. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. We will be talking some baseball today. Of course, we're talking baseball. That's pretty much all I ever talk about. So the non-tender deadline was just a few days ago, and I think that it might have been better than we actually expected it to be. Only 59 players were non-tendered. They thought that it could possibly get up to like the hundreds. Like, that's crazy. But there were 59 players that signed pre-deadline contracts. So 59 of those. But out of all of these non-tenders, like half of them were right-handed relief pitchers, which is crazy. And so I thought we could talk about some closer situations today, even though it's obviously very early to be discussing closers right now. But it's crazy. Like, there's so many new closers this year because there's so many closers available. Okay. And it speaks a lot about where we're at in the game of baseball and the role that these closers are playing on a team. It seems like they're not as valuable as they were. Obviously, you sign a guy like Edwin Diaz, and he is horrible, or Blake Trinan, or like a lot of them. I mean, you could go through the list, but it seems like they're very volatile. They're really good one season, and the next season they're horrible, and there's just too many other able pitchers to, fill in that role. And I think that they're using an effector more often now. So if you've been around for a while, you know what an effector is. If not, it's basically this name that I came up with 10 years ago one night when I was talking to Lenny on the phone. And I said, why isn't Aroldis Chapman pitching right now? Because the Cincinnati Reds were like, it was the seventh inning or something. And it was a very important part of the game where the game was on the line. And I was like, Aroldis Chapman needs to come in right now. He was the original effector. And then that year, we saw Terry Francona using the effector, which was Andrew Miller, in the playoffs. So he just basically like, I'm going to use my closer whenever the game is on the line, when he's needed the most. And ever since then, it seems like they've been inching towards that more and more. I think it's important to use your best pitcher in a situation that he's most needed, because if the game's on the line right now in the seventh, what's the point if you're not going to, maintain your lead or whatever it is? Get it done. Get the job done. Okay. JR Matz, nice to see you. Where's Malpal? Is he here? Yay, Malpal. Okay. Unholy Toledo is here. Al Cola, Doug Boyle, Douglas. Yay. Okay. And guest Brad. So, let's get started talking. Let's get some news first. We have the Cubbies, the White Sox, the Cubbies and the White Sox, Lynn Casper, 16 years as with the Cubbies. And now all of a sudden he just up and leaves to go to the Chicago White Sox as a radio guy instead of a TV guy. And people say, what the hell is that? And really, I think if anybody has looked into this at all, they would find out that he's always wanted to do radio, and I don't blame him. I always want to do radio too, above TV, but I don't think that he even said that the Cubbies made him a good financial deal to stay with the Cubs, and he decided, I don't know what the White Sox are paying him. It doesn't really matter because he's at a point in his life and his career where he just wants to do the radio. And one thing about it is that if you're not Joe Buck, then you're not going to be doing the TV like for a World Series. And I think that part of the big deal for him is that he wants to call a World Series game. And if you're doing radio, you can do the local World Series. He will be able to do Chicago White Sox. And I mean, the Cubbies aren't going to be winning a World Series in the next few years. Okay. You could talk to the Red Sox about what happens to your team once Theo comes and gets you a World Series, because then he leaves you in a huge pile of debt. with no farm system and no possible path to the World Series for a while. The Red Sox did win the World Series in 2018, I think. So, but that was years after their last World Series. And they literally, Theo was traded for a player to be named later, I think. He went from the Red Sox to the Cubbies. He was traded for a player to be named later. Nobody really knows who that was because it's usually nobody worth really talking about, probably some prospect or something. But Theo's on his way out, and the Cubbies are in not a great position. Javi Baez had a horrible season last year. He says that he feels like them taking away the ability to look at the iPad live during games in the dugout, that hurts him. JD Martinez says the same thing. Like, that's not like, they really relied on that to be able to watch in-game footage of what they're doing and fix whatever they're doing wrong. Javi Baez had an average of it was near the Mendoza line. And in my opinion, that was bound to happen sooner or later with Javi Baez because he swings at so many pitches. And his strikeout rate was close to 30%. And I didn't even know that until somebody said something to me last season. And I was like, wow, I had no idea that this guy strikes out as much as he does. And eventually it's going to catch up to you. If you continue to have a lack of plate discipline, eventually it's going to catch up with you. Okay. This is not the minor leagues. So with Javi Baez, I'm just not that surprised that it happened. It's amazing to me that he was able to get away with hitting 280, 290 for years before it did catch up with him. He's a fun player to watch, but look at what's going on in Cubbyville. It's Chris Bryant is ready to get the hell out of there. He doesn't want to play for the Cubbies. I mean, he lost that. He's tried to sue them for leaving him down in the minor leagues when he was ready to come up to the majors, and it didn't work out for him. And what they did by denying him that claim was basically tell everybody that this is what we're allowing MLB to get away with. We're going to let them keep you down in the minors for the number of days that it takes for you to not be able to qualify for a full season, and we get to have an extra season of control, and we get to pay you $500,000 whether you like it or not. And then what happens is, when it comes time for arbitration, they say, is he worth the arbitration that we're going to have to pay him? And if they feel like no other team is going to pay, if they feel like you're not worth that money, which is what they did to several players just a couple days ago, that they non-tender you. So you spend all these years in minor leagues working your way up to the majors to get shit on. Basically, when it comes time for arbitration, they just let you go. And that, I think, needs to really be talked about in the next agreement that they're doing, which is not actually in effect till after 2021, I believe. Or it's not going to be for another year that this whole CBA thing comes into play. But they're using certain things right now to come up with ways to negotiate. Like, for sure, they're going to have something in the agreement that talks about pandemics, or if there's no fans allowed in the ballparks, because I mean, MLB is this greedy. Okay, MLB is this greedy as a whole, because every single team is suing. And usually when I say suing, I had to dig to find out exactly what that meant, because usually if you're just trying to make a claim with your insurance company, you're not really suing them. You're just making a claim. And apparently the claims were denied by the insurance company, who, in a lot of situations, this pandemic, this virus, it's not covered. There's little carve outs, basically, like, we're not going to be responsible for natural disasters, or I guess, Wimbledon, the tennis Wimbledon, they've paid for disaster coverage, which is like millions of dollars a year. They paid for that for the last 15 years. And they were like one of the very few who actually was covered under this pandemic. And they got like 130 million or something in damages from the insurance company. But they've been paying extra for it's not just the normal run of the mill insurance. And so MLB, I do have some notes on this. MLB, just come on, man. Because, I mean, it would be fine if they were actually using the money to. What about all the people that they're laying off? Do they plan on hiring those people back if they get the money from the insurance company? I don't think so. I think they're just going to keep, they're laying off people all over the place, all over the country. Teams are laying off their office workers, they're everybody right before the holidays. And it's just like, really, you already know how I feel about that because we talked about it yesterday. I mean, it's just unimaginable that they would be laying off all of these people that have, like the Dodgers, for instance, the richest team in baseball. I mean, that's arguable, but in my opinion, they have several multi-billion-dollar owners on that Dodgers. And it's like the amount of money that it would cost to pay these people that they've let go for the amount of money that it would cost to pay these people through the holidays is you could throw that money out the window and they wouldn't even notice. So the fact that they're suing now, I read an article at Baseball Prospectus today talking about how MLB, they never show their books. They never show their books. They never open it up. There's no transparency whatsoever when it comes to the ownerships of these teams. And so you have to go by what they say, right? Because you're only going to get so much information, which is seedy to begin with. But, okay, I was reading at Baseball Prospectus. The article was saying that the teams didn't lose any more than what they would normally make in a season. So whatever profit they would have made, that's how much they lost last season. And, they're getting rid of minor league teams. They just got rid of the Staten Island Yankees, which Lenny and I love that ballpark so much. It's got the best view. And it sucks because they were doing this huge thing in Staten Island. They were putting this huge Ferris wheel, like the biggest Ferris wheel in the world or the tallest or whatever. They were building an outlet mall there. The ride on the ferry from the city to the Staten Island is free and it's fun. It's nice. You could drink beer on there. You could stand outside. It's just beautiful. You go right by the Statue of Liberty and it's free to go back and forth from the city to Staten Island. And it was going to be such a wonderful thing. Like, it totally fell through. So it really put the Staten Island Yankee ballpark into a lot of a bad position. So anyway, they ended up calling up the Staten Island Yankees saying, we're getting rid of some of our New York minor league teams. And I know that in Pittsburgh, Shaman was saying that they got rid of a Pittsburgh team. And I think that they're going to get rid of minor league teams, but the majority of them are staying. And you think about how many minor league teams that there have been. I mean, New York had like 6 minor league teams, and it's just unnecessary that many teams. So anyway, the Staten Island Yankees are suing the Yankees for like unkept promises, right? All these promises that they made about how much, revenue they're going to make, and the affiliation with the Yankees is obviously great. But anyway, the league, MLB, and all 30 of its teams are suing the insurance providers, citing billions of dollars lost in the 2020 season. Unbelievable. Okay. Number one, they made money. Like, they extended the playoffs. They made money. It was all about them making money. They had the very base minimum number of games that they had to have, just enough to keep their contracts with the TV channels. And so that, and of course, MLB makes most of their money during the playoffs and the World Series. That didn't change. That like expanded for them. They say that they lost billions of dollars on unsold tickets, hundreds of millions on concessions, tens of millions on parking. For crying out loud, it's unbelievable. $50 to park at Cubbies. That I remember completely, because Lenny and Mark and me, we got there super early. Lenny always likes to get places early. And we parked the car on the sidewalk, like on the street. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and the game wasn't until like 6 o'clock at night. And I'm just shitty by then, like half drunk by the time the game starts. But it was a lot of fun in Wrigleyville because everybody's drinking. There's bars everywhere. They're like selling stuff on the streets. It's fun. But $50 to park your car if you're going to this game, you know, and at Wrigleyville. At Citi Field, it's like $30 to park your car, which is a lot better, okay, than $50. But I couldn't believe the $50. I mean, you could go to a Pittsburgh Pirates game, buy 2 tickets behind home plate, and park your car for like $60. It's $10 to park your car at PNC. Anyway, okay, that's just a side tangent, whatever. Okay, they're saying that they lost a bunch of money on parking, millions, tens of millions in parking, and million more on suites and luxury seat licenses, in-park merchandise sales, and corporate sponsorships. It also cites over $1 billion in local and national media losses. Whatever. Tens of millions in missed income for MLB advanced media. And it says all of these should just be covered by the insurance, right? And so the fact that, I mean, okay, the games were played without fans, right? And we do know they did lose money, but the capacity of most ballparks are right around 10 or 11,000. And they did have fans in the playoffs at the National League Championship Series and World Series. And I think the American League too. Why wouldn't they have fans there? But either way, they had fans in the playoffs. So here's what they're saying, though. They're not even really, they're saying that the pandemic, the virus, the literal virus, the COVID-19, the presence, this is in quotes, okay? This is comes right out of the article. The presence of the coronavirus and COVID-19, including but not limited to coronavirus droplets or nuclei on solid surfaces and in the air at insured property, has caused and will continue to cause direct physical damage to physical property and ambient air at the premises. They're saying that the coronavirus is damaging their shit. It makes no sense, okay? Coronavirus, a physical substance, has attached and adhered to the plaintiff's property, and by doing so, it altered that property. Such presence has also directly resulted in loss of use of the facility. So, yeah, dude, it's not damaging the property. It's not damaging your physical property. It's just not. I mean, it dies in several hours. It's going to die. It's just an odd thing to me. I mean, I know Malpal's a lawyer. I just wonder how that is going to go over. Many teams have laid off front office employees in response to the pandemic, and many are predicting a slow off season for players in free agency. But that's going to happen regardless, right? So are you planning on, like, if you get money from the insurance, are you planning on, like, hiring more people back? I don't think they are. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. They did, Kyle Schwarber was let go. Kyle Schwarber is a big fan favorite in Cubbiesville. I mean, Unholy Toledo is a big Cubby guy. And, Kyle Schwarber is a big fan favorite. But you know what? All of these guys, like Adam Duvall, Kyle Schwarber, Eddie Rosario, there's several of these players that were let go of in this non-tender deal. Let me just find that part here. None of them have. David Dahl is another one. It was like $2.5 million, and they just let him go instead of paying him $2.5 million. Like, why would you stick with David Dahl all this time, and then all of a sudden now you're not going to pay him $2.5 million? I think that obviously the fact that we don't know if there's going to be a DH in the National League this year, and likely there's probably, I would say that likely not, because they're too busy using it as some kind of bargaining chip, for the agreement, the new one. But 23 of these 59 non-tendered players were right-handed relievers. And then you have, none of these guys have great defense, but I think that the mix of shady defense skills and the fact that because of the shady defense skills, you can't really rely on them in a position. So if you don't have a DH, you got to be like, okay, I don't know. You got to take that into consideration. We as fantasy players do not deal with, we don't deal with defense, but it's important to know that Eddie Rosario, Kyle Schwarber, Maikel Franco, Nomar Mazara, Danny Santana, Travis Shaw, they're all shady for defense. They're all like below average for the defensive statistics. And So, okay. And a lot of these guys, maybe not, maybe they'll be signed back again. Maybe they won't. But the thing about David Dahl is that I'm wearing my Colorado Rocky shirt today. I don't really know why, because they kind of, I feel bad for David Dahl. This guy allowed the doctors to take his spleen. Okay. He had some issue with his spleen, and they were like, okay, we can either like sew it up, fix it up, but then you're going to be out for the entire season. And he was like, no, just take it out, because he wanted to get back to the games. He wanted to play for the Rockies. So here's a guy gives up his spleen so the Rockies don't, I don't know. I mean, David Dahl spent most of his career on the DL, and I don't have his numbers sitting right in front of me, but I can remember several years where it was like, oh, this guy again, like, when is he ever going to play a full season without getting hurt? But the bottom line is, here he is. He says, just take my spleen out. And now, because of the fact that he has no spleen, he has a lot bigger risk for COVID to have bad side effects on him, right? COVID, the fact that, anyway, his health situation now makes him more vulnerable to a very bad reaction to the COVID. And it's like, Colorado is not going to be signing him. They already made it very clear that they're just not going to be spending the money. And they're still not ready to win a World Series. They're not even ready to compete. I feel horrible for Arenado. Arenado is like, was it Blackman? I think it's Arenado. We talk about Arenado being dissatisfied with the way that the Rockies are going about things, because they promised him, if you stay here, we'll build up a team, we'll put together a winning team. I mean, you think about it as a player, and you're stuck on a team that is not winning, like, it's not fun. And I think that it's frustrating for a player like Arenado, who's very good, to say, okay, I'm just going to accept the fact that you're not even trying to make this team a World Series competing team. You're not even trying. So anyways, another thing is that arbitration, in arbitration, they value players different than they value players in the teams. Like, so the team values a player, or the coach, the manager, whatever. They value players different than arbitration law values players. So a lot of times I think that obviously they take into consideration all kinds of shit. And like when Bauer was doing his arbitration, Bauer, he's always putting everything out there. He just put a video out of him throwing a pitch and hitting his microphone on his camera and just destroying the microphone, talking about non-tendering, talking about where's he going to go. There's some players that are going to definitely, they're not in trouble or like in any sort of danger of not having a job next year. Trevor Bauer is one of them. That's great for him. I'm very happy for him. I love the fact that he is open, like he just puts it all out there. Apparently the fans were like stalking him and stuff. They were coming to his house and like finding out where his workout facility was, and he was like, please don't come to my workout facility and stare at me through the window. Like, everybody deserves a little bit of privacy. I mean, it's true. Okay, that's just weird. But he told fans, he said, the best fans, the fans that want me the most, that's where I'm going to sign. We all know that's a crock of shit, but I definitely know that he wants to go to a team that's could possibly win a World Series, right? We'll see how that works out. I really hope they let him pitch think about the fantasy value if he pitches every fourth day, which is what he wants to do. And if he's only pitching for a 1-year contract, then it's perfect, because nobody has to worry about the long-term health or like, what if we hurt your arm, whatever. We only owe you money for 1 year. And so let's, by all means, if you're going to go out there and get it done every time, then every fourth day it is. Okay. Let's see what's going on in the chat room. Whoops. What just happened? Oh, I hit okay. So we have the counter here on the website. You can see right below the chat room, baseball starts in 117 days, my friends. Yes, the L train does go right to Wrigleyville, and definitely most people take the L train for sure. It's the smart way to go, and maybe they charge so much to like discourage people from driving down there. Nobody should be driving in Chicago regardless. We were just, when you're not from there and you are driving your car, you know, whatever. Schwarber is a big shock to me too. Schwarber, he'll get signed though, right? I mean, but he's not going to get signed by a National League team until we figure, you know, he's not going to get signed by a National League team. Even Nelly Cruz right now doesn't have a job. This guy's hit more home runs than anybody for the past 5 seasons or something. I don't know, the last 5 seasons, but the baseball players have become spoiled crybabies, and that's tough, you know. I think they have, in a way. I think that it's just very maddening when, you know, if you're just a normal person, you're like, God, you're complaining about a couple $1 million, and most people are happy to like put food on their table right now, since our government can't even get a fucking stimulus package together to send out to the people who are needing it. That's a whole other story that I'm not allowed to talk about on my baseball shows. No, my glasses, they're staying on. They're staying on. That's my costume for the day. You're the one that told me to wear a costume. Lenny thinks he could tell me what to do, and he thinks he could decide what time I come on too. That doesn't work out for him, though. Okay. So many closers have changed hands, okay? So we talked about Lynn Asper, or Casper. I wonder what Unholy Toledo thinks of that, because, you know, the Cubbies said that they offered him, or he said that they offered him a good amount of money. He wants to do radio. I don't blame him. Lenny does, you know, Lenny's a radio guy, and, you know, so I have to say doing radio is much better. You could just wake up, be in your pajamas. You don't have to do anything to get ready. You can do whatever you want. You could be, it doesn't matter. Nobody sees you. Okay. Before we get into the closers, I wanted to just bring up one thing. There was an article done by Eno Saris at The Athletic, and I just found it yesterday, but it was written in October. It was about Randy Arozarena. And the thing about it is, here's a guy from Cuba, and yes, he was excellent in the postseason, and he's probably going to cost more than he's worth at the draft. And so I won't probably have him on any of my teams, but there is, I mean, is he going to hit 400 next year? I doubt it. He's really not. But he did. That's a great article by Eno Saris. If you have a subscription to The Athletic, you should read it. I think it's called, like, How Long Is This Randy Arozarena like roller coaster going to last? Whatever. Anyway, it talked about, it showed a video of the Tampa Bay Rays doing a dance-off contest. Like, it was him against Brett Phillips. They were doing competitions, right? Taking turns. Like, they were just having so much fun. That's my point of that. Telling you that because the Tampa Bay Rays, when you see how much fun this team is having together, and you see the camaraderie that this team has, you understand why they made it to where they did, because they got along and they had a great time. And so anyway, Arozarena, you know, he got arrested, and I don't even know. Nobody really knows the details of that, but he, the charges have been dropped on that. He's got an ex-wife, an ex-girlfriend. He's got a kid. And so, you know, all of that stuff can quickly spin out of control. So anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what he's done to improve over the past couple seasons. And also I wanted to touch on the fact that he's from Cuba. And whenever you hear that a player is from Cuba, you know that they probably had to go through living hell to get to America to play baseball, because, well, we don't have a great relationship with Cuba. And even though teams will sign Cuban players, in order to get here, they have to go through Mexico, and they have to sneak out of Cuba, basically. And so a lot of times they have to leave their family. And some of the most intriguing stories, like Jose Fernandez, he tried like a couple times to come over, and Arozarena said, you know, I got into this glorified kayak, basically. And that's pretty much the same type of thing that you hear from Puig, from I don't know if Aroldis Chapman is from Cuba, but I think he might be. And it just being from Cuba, it just tells you right away they went through hell to get here. They have resilience, they have grit, they have this fighting attitude, like they're gonna, they didn't grow up like we did. And anyway, so like Jose Fernandez, his mother or his grandmother fell out of the boat. Like he had to jump into the water to save her, and Puig tried like 3 or 4 times to get here, and he ended up. Puig's is the most fascinating story of all, but Arozarena did go through some hard times trying to get from Cuba to the United States. And when he did get here, he was called up in 2019, and he worked with his coach. He said that his coach worked with him. They watched video, and they figured out that he needed to straighten up his batting stance, and he needed to learn how to pitch or hit pitches that were up high in the zone. And so that's what he did. And he crushes fastballs. Like only one player, Salvador Perez, I think it is, that had more home runs off of fastballs or hit fastballs harder than he did. He just crushes fastballs, but he also can hit off speed pitches. Like he was very good against sinkers. And the thing is that now that he raised his hands up on the bat, and he just changed his batting stance, so he straightened up more. And so there are things with mechanics that say that he has made some necessary adjustments. But baseball, it's a constant game of adjustments, so you have to always be making adjustments. And if you're not willing to make those adjustments, then the pitchers will figure you out. The catchers will figure you out, and then they'll tell the pitchers, and then it's on. So Arozarena, is he going to hit 400? I don't think so. But here's one thing I do know. It hit me really quickly that he is absolutely a monster against lefties. In daily game, in FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever, he is going to be, I don't know how much he's going to cost at first, okay? He'll probably be expensive to start the season, but he's a great player when facing lefties because he will hit like 400 against lefties. He's been doing it ever since he came to the majors, and he'll probably continue to do it. It's how is he going to hit against right-handed pitchers, but I still think he's going to hit decent. I mean, it's not like horrible against righties and great against lefties. It's like 250 against righties and 320 against lefties. He just crushes lefties. He crushes fastballs. 4-seam, 2-seam, doesn't matter. The one area where he seems to have a little trouble is hitting pitches that are down low in the zone. But like whoever wrote the article that I was reading, I think it was Eno. He wrote that article. He said that it really goes along with the way that baseball is going these days, that they're actually teaching pitchers to pitch the way that he hits. So they don't typically throw down in the zone anymore because they know that launch angle is like a big deal. So do you remember when they used to like try to tell Zach Wheeler not to throw up high in the zone? Like that's how he pitches. He pitches his pitches, they go a little bit high, and they would say, don't do that. Don't do that. It's like he tried to change his style or whatever. And the thing is that now they're teaching pitchers to throw up in the zone. They're teaching pitchers because they don't want you to be like Big Papi and just be like swinging. I mean, I could just picture Big Papi in my head when I talk about that, where the launch angle is such a big deal nowadays, the barrels and all of this. And he does hit the ball super hard. I think his hardest hit home run with the exit velocity of like 150 miles an hour. It's crazy how hard he hits the ball. So Arozarena, to draft or not to draft? I would not draft him because I just have a feeling I know that he's going to be really expensive. Thanks. Thank you. The station that will be, yes, Unholy Toledo could write a book about Chicago traffic. One time, Lenny and me and Mark were driving, and I just remember we were headed out of town, out of Chicago that day. Do you remember, Lenny? We got stuck on that bridge and we were there for like 8 hours straight on this bridge. We had to cancel our reservations at a hotel. That was crazy. I remember. And yes, Chicago traffic is horrible. So, okay, what we're going to talk about. Yeah, only Salvador Perez hit barrels more often per fastball seen in 2020. He was 4th against 4-seamers and 8th against 2-seamers. He can hit off-speed pitches as long as they aren't low. I told you that. He hit 318 with a 500 slugging on sliders. He doesn't swing at pitches that are low. He doesn't swing at pitches that are outside the zone too much, but his strikeout rate is kind of high. It's like 26% or something. I don't know. I guess that's not really that high anymore. It used to be that if you struck out 20% of the time, like you weren't going to make it in baseball. Do you remember that? Now you could just strike out 28% of the time and be like Javi Baez. And okay, so this is what Eno said in quotes. He was excellent in all the ways that are more meaningful in small samples. Maximum exit velocity has been shown to have predictive value. Barrels are useful in smaller samples, and a player's exit velocity on line drives and fly balls has been shown to have value in hard hit angle research. So he was 47th in the big leagues in max exit velocity, 39th in barrels per batted ball, and 31st in fly ball and line drive exit velocity. So it says that he plays perfectly with the league's strengths and weaknesses. Anyway, I have all the stats here, but I pretty much already told you everything about that. Let's go moving on. We're moving on to closers. The closers. Let me pull up my closers. So here's what I did. I went to RotoWire. I'm working on the draft guide. It is I use the depth charts, the batting orders from RotoChamp, and pull all that stuff in. So I compare between RotoWire and RotoChamp the lineups, the batting orders, and such, right? The closers. So for the most part, the closers are pretty much the same between the two. There's a couple extra, like in Arizona, Stefan Crichton is listed on both spaces as the closer. And I do think that Kevin Ginkel still has a chance to be the closer there. I know I'm biased. I've been liking this guy ever since I found him last year, but like let me tell you, there's 30 closers, okay? So what we know now, out of the 30 teams and 30 closers, let me sort this by, so what I did was I took these closers stats for the last 3 years. So some of them have a lot of saves and some of them have not very many. In fact, 14 out of 30 closers that are listed as the team's closer right now have less than 10 saves combined over 3 years, the last 3 years. So a lot of these guys are young, most of them inexperienced. A lot of them have more blown saves than they do saves. And with all of these actual experienced closers available on, to sign, I would think that some of these teams are going to be signing Brad Hand, Liam Hendriks. I mean, these pitchers are not going to stay unsigned. Like, even a team is interested in getting Joaquin Soria right now. I don't think he's going to be the closer, but I mean, all these free agents, I just have never seen this many free agent closers ever. I do not ever recall this many free agent closers in fantasy. But like, they have Drew Pomeranz listed in San Diego as the closer, and I know that there's another guy there that is potentially the closer in San Diego if they don't sign anybody. It's Dan Altavia. I'd be interested in what you think about the closer situation in San Diego. Also, Daniel Bard. I mean, I love Daniel Bard. I think it's a great story that he's come back, to Tommy Johns or whatever. I mean, the guy's been through shit and back, and he's like managed to climb his way back into baseball. And I love the story, but really, Daniel Bard, I don't know. Is he going to be reliable. I mean, I know he has 6 saves. All of them were last year because he didn't play for a long time. He didn't blow any saves out of 6, so you got that going. But like Ryan Pressly in Houston, Osuna is a free agent. Ryan Pressly, he's blown 15 saves and he's actually successfully completed 17 saves over the past 3 years. He's a great bullpen guy. He was one of the better relievers in what's that Stratomatic game that we were playing? Stratomatic. But I love the fact that both Taylor and Tyler Rogers are listed as the closers. Okay, one in Minnesota and one in San Francisco. They're brothers, and I love both of them. I do think that Taylor Rogers was obviously not anywhere near what he was like the year before that, right? That's how volatile these closers are. But still, Taylor and Tyler Rogers can't go wrong. Just draft a Rogers. Yanks on Rosenthal. He's another one. Is he great closer? He was very good last year, I think, when he I don't have the free agent stats in front of me, but I can tell you that there are a ton of closers available, right? I do think that the Milwaukee Brewers need to invest in a closer. They are just going to wreck Josh Hader, okay, if they continue to use him in that role. Plus, he's not good. He's not that good as a closer. He's blown 14 saves in the past 3 years. He has, okay, completed 62 saves. He's okay. But seriously, we get stuck in stats. We get stuck thinking like Josh Hader was so good. And so automatically, if you're not paying good enough attention, you can say to yourself, like Josh Hader, I'm going to pay top dollar. He's just hasn't been that good ever since he started to be the actual closer. Like against lefties, he's no good. And I only figured this out because Stratomatic. When I paid like a god awful amount of money for him in Stratomatic, and then I realized, holy moly, this is not that great. His stats weren't that good. So I think he needs to be replaced. And so who aren't the Yankees on? I know, right? Okay. I'm surprised every player isn't going to the Yankees, but all right. So for the closers, now Edwin Diaz, believe it or not, he has 90 saves in the past 3 years, more than any other closer, okay, listed. And then Kenley Jansen, of course, but the Dodgers just signed. Who did the Dodgers just sign? Put it in the chat room. They just signed a closer that's, I guess, just, I don't know. Anyway, like Matt Barnes, he's not the closer. He's just not the closer. He's blown 15 saves and he's had 13 good saves. And yes, he strikes out a shitload of batters. Forgive me. He strikes out a ton of batters. But he's not a closer. One thing I was reading in the Baseball Forecaster, they were talking about some things like this year they have some more, they've added stats to the Baseball Forecaster. And I mean, seriously, I'm still going through like the first introduction to the Baseball Forecaster because it's like super in depth. There's like a lot of good information in there. And they were talking about the idea that do overworked players get hurt more often? And funny enough, it was like, actually, no, they don't get hurt more often. Overworked players, the more a player plays, offensive players, I'm talking about offense. I think we're talking about offensive. I swear, in my personal opinion, I do not believe that throwing more innings is going to hurt a pitcher in itself. I think that the delivery, the release, like the way that pitcher releases the pitches, the way that they throw, like if they're really like not smooth, if they're trying to throw the ball 100 miles an hour every time, that is going to eventually wreck a person's arm, no matter what, no matter, because your arm is just not meant to be throwing that hard that often. I do want to say that I want to find this. Okay, it says we're in pictures now. Hold on. very interesting stuff in the Baseball Forecaster. They talk about all kinds of shit. Here we go. Okay. Batting order is a great thing to be looking at too during drafts. You got to look at batting order. It's very important. It is very important. You think about the number of at bats these hitters get when they are up high in the batting order. Okay, it says, geez, I'm telling you, there's so many. There's like 60 pages of interesting information. Okay. Half season. Okay. Do overworked hitters wear down? A study compared the first and second half statistics for batters who played the most games over the entire season from 2002 to 2016. These players were continually run out on the field, and one figures that fatigue would show up in their statistics. Conversely, the numbers don't support the wear down narrative. If anything, their output improves the more that they play. Though this concept goes against conventional wisdom, it is true. If a hitter plays more, the more likely he is healthy and not wearing down. Also, spring training. It says that spring training sound bites. They raise expectations among fantasy leaguers. How much of that news is really noise? And basically, a study that they did reported the verdict that it's mostly noise, because they analyze how a player does in April. And this book is fascinating. I look forward to it every year, and I think that it's worth everybody taking the time to look at it if you're, to get prepared for fantasy. I haven't even made it to the pitchers yet, but it talks about how to project power, speed, when, what age is doing. Just naturally, age is going to catch up with players, and what to expect for age. I mean, some players, they last forever. They seem like they never slow down. But anyway, they talk about in this 2021 version of the Baseball Forecaster, they talk about something that I don't recall them really talking about that much in the last few years, which is stolen base. Are stolen bases really? Is it more about how fast a player runs, or is it more about the green light? Like, there's a lot to do with the fact that if a player is allowed to run when he wants, when he feels comfortable, how successful is he on the base paths? It doesn't matter if you're like Byron Buxton runs hella fast. Franchy Cordero runs hella fast. So does Tatis. And like, but some of these fast runners are not successful, so they don't get the permission to run anytime. Do you remember Odubel Herrera? This is what it makes me think of. Odubel, do you remember when he came around third base and the third base coach was like, stop, and he just kept running? Like, literally, he ran around the third base coach, around the outside of him, and he did get out too that time. But they were just pissed. They were like, we're just done with you. He just did what he wanted. And so some managers are really a lot less willing to let players run on the base paths. It is a risky situation because, especially with all the home runs nowadays, like, why risk an out on the base paths if you don't have to? Because the next guy can hit you in. So they're not letting players run as much as they used to, I don't think. Billy Hamilton is a pretty good example. There was always some players, like a couple each season, Gerard Dyson and like Sean Figgins, I think, if I remember right. But like Raja Davis, these guys, fantasy people draft these guys because they say, oh, whoopity, I could get all my stolen bases taken care of just by drafting Billy Hamilton. And it's like, I remember one year when Lenny was telling on the podcast, he was saying that Billy Hamilton wasn't even going to be in the lineup. And people were they disagreed with him. They laughed at it. They thought it was crazy that Billy Hamilton wouldn't get in the lineup. And do you remember that, Lenny? I mean, it turned out to be true. Billy Hamilton did not get in the lineup because the management was so frustrated with the fact that he can't get on base. So how are you going to steal bases if you can't get on base? So basically, like, wasted talent at D. Gordon right now. It's Billy Hamilton. And I wonder if maybe the stolen base is not what it used to be. I mean, shoot, like 30 years ago, they were stealing like 80 bases. People were stealing like 80 bases. I've never even seen in my entire fantasy career, have I seen a runner steal more than 50 or 60 bases at the most. But, you know, like right before I started playing fantasy, people were stealing like 80 bases. I mean, that's a guy that you could definitely draft if you're going to get that one category out of him, even though maybe usually guys that did that, though, they had good batting averages, they had good on base percentage. We didn't play with on base percentage back then, but you know what I mean? Like they actually were worth drafting, even though they were just one trick ponies, because they were successful at it and they were allowed to steal bases. Now you see players like, I mean, D. Gordon didn't do anything to just fall off the planet. I mean, he pretty much always maintained a decent batting average. He was kind of a one-trick pony, but, you know, he went to Seattle. I think Seattle's just not the right fit for him. But either way, he just basically got shut out of baseball. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're just not letting players run anymore. Corey Knebel. Okay, yes, Corey Knebel. He's Dodgers. Dodgers signed him. Wait, is that true? Dodgers? Brandon Kinsler. He's a closer. He was I think that he was a Marlin last year. I really think that I'm talking about the right person. Forgive me if I'm wrong here. This is coming out of just my head, just my memory. But he missed some time the year before. Nobody was really paying attention to him going into last season, except Lenny did say something about it. And I was like, that guy, he's useless, whatever. And then I did some research. And when I was writing the draft guide, I was studying Brandon Kinsler. I was like, actually, he has shown that he's a decent closer and a decent pitcher. And he was valuable in fantasy last year. He doesn't have a team now, but any team would be better off with him. So I don't have I remember everything. Okay. Sure. All right. What else? Let's talk more about closers. Drew Pomeranz is not going to be the closer in San Diego. I could tell you that right now. And then with Altavilla, I don't think that Malpal, I don't know if Malpal said anything, but I definitely look, James Karinchak is going to be the closer in Cleveland. But you have guys that have very little experience, little to no experience, listed as closers on 14 out of 30 teams. Like, you have Rafael Dolis. He's actually got more experience than some of these guys. Some of these guys have he's got 24 total innings in the last 3 years. And you know, Johan Ramirez, he's got 20 total innings in Major League Baseball. I mean, I'm assuming that that's all he has total. But like I said, this is just for the last 3 years combined. And most of these guys are super young. And I think that I would recognize their names, like Mike Mayers in LA. LA non-tendered 4 relievers, right-handed relievers, 4 of them. But they still have like 8 relievers in Los Angeles. They've always just had way too many not valuable relievers over there. It seems like ever since I can remember, they've just been a mess when it comes to the bullpen. But they had like Cam Bedrosian. They always have lots of choices, but none of them are any good. The Angels really need to pull it together and do something. Aaron Bummer, it looks like is he the closer for the White Sox? Aaron Bummer, this guy is a Stratomatic MVP. Aaron Bummer. I think he's a lefty. I don't know that for sure, but he's one of the better relievers. So I just feel like, why are you going to put this guy as a closer when he's so good as a setup guy or a bullpen guy? You have this. I don't know, Brian Garcia. He's a Tiger, Detroit Tigers. He's not good. He's blown 3 saves and he's been successful with 4 saves. He only strikes out 6 batters per 9. And if you're going to go for most of these guys strike out a ton of batters. That's one reason why it makes sense why they're listed as the closer. They can strike out batters like crazy. Jake Dykman, Scott Barlow, Karinchak is a mastermind at striking out batters. Johan Ramirez is a great one. Rafael Dolis, good strikeout rate. Richard Rodriguez for the Pirates. I mean, you're pitching for the Pirates, but you're still striking out 11 batters per 9. Another thing the Baseball Forecaster did this year was they stopped doing K per 9. They started doing Ks per batter faced, which I think is great because I think that is going to give you a great sense of not only just a better understanding of the percentage of strikeout percentage, but also that how many hitters are you facing? Like if you're pitching 1 inning, that doesn't tell me how many batters you're facing. And like I remember at the end of Jonathan Papelbon's Red Sox days, it would just be every time he would go out there to pitch to close out a game, it would be like just a nightmare. You would be just holding on to the bottom of your seat, just waiting for Papelbon to blow up. He would always come through, but he would always just cause so much stress for fans because he would be walking batters. They're on base. There's like 5 or 6 batters it would take him, when it used to only take him. I mean, he would go in there and he would get it done in 3 batters, like 3 up, 3 down, you're out. Like it's a great feeling. But the stats are the same regardless of how many batters you face, right? So when you're dealing with just innings, and I think that's a great way to maybe like start to look at the K per 9. I think it's important to try to keep the number of batters that you face down. So if you're only facing 3 and you're striking out 3, that's a lot better than if you're facing 6 and you're striking out 3. It's a big difference. Okay. We're going to talk more about closers in the next upcoming weeks. And I did go through the non-tender. I went through to see which teams were like non-tendering positions that they had like starters, like where players were actually the starter. Like Maikel Franco was the starter at third base in Kansas City. So now who is it going to be? I think it's going to be Kelvin Gutierrez. And I'm just putting these together now where I highlighted all the free agents and I'm just comparing it to like their new depth charts, but I haven't really, to be honest, I haven't spent enough time on it to like give you guys a good overview of what teams gave up the most players or just let players go that we thought was like Tony Walters was the catcher in Colorado. He's the only one I have on my list here, so I don't know yet who's the catcher in Colorado. Kurt Casale, Cincinnati let him go, non-tendered Kurt Casale. I don't know who's going to be this catcher in Cincinnati. Wait, there is a catcher, but where's Bauer going to go? Is Bauer going to come to New York? What do you guys think? There's I think Reddit has a poll right now, or maybe it's Twitter. I don't know. It's one place where you could say where you think that Bauer's going to go. I wish he would just admit that he's dating his agent. Okay, it's so obvious. Come on, people. It's just so obvious. I don't know why you would just not say it because, well, I do know why you would not say it. But they went to college together. She is doing, she just got her first pitching coach signed. She has a pitching coach. She also has a softball player as a client. And this was her first pitching coach that she got signed. I think it's to the White Sox, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's Cincinnati. Cincinnati assigned her client pitching coach. And I guess he's the youngest pitching coach to ever get signed to the majors. That he's young, but she said he's really smart, blah, blah, blah. She was really excited about that. But she's got clients, their coaches, their managers, their, all kinds of levels. And she's got Yasiel Puig now. She has Cargo as one of her clients. And, of course, she's interesting to listen to because she's actually she talks about from her point of view as an agent. Her and Bauer are constantly talking, and it gives you like way more insight than you ever got from any other agent, because most agents aren't like willing to go and tell the inside about what's going on, what's really going on. And so anyways, if you get, you know, she's on Trevor Bauer's YouTube channel, Momentum. She's on there. She used to be a gymnast. She wanted to be a sports agent from the time she was a freshman in college at UCLA. She has been working towards that for the last like 12 years or so. She's a lawyer. She's worked in arbitration, helping. She was an assistant to the arbitration lawyers in MLB. She knows what she's doing. She's a perfect example of like what hard work does, where it gets you, and I really think it's great. She was actually ranked in Forbes as one of the most, one of the top, 50 most, I don't know if like most successful or whatever Forbes does, Anyway, that's fun, but I think it's great to follow her, to listen to her, to see a woman doing well. They're really the whole I just don't see any kind of the way it used to be, where it was like girls can't be managers. That Asian lady that's a manager now for the Marlins, she's worked her way up too, just like Luba did, and it's just nice to see that. So it's just nice to see that inclusiveness with women. I don't think it's anything like it used to be, where you really had to go against a lot of like harassment. And I don't see it at all. I mean, I think this is probably the best time ever to be a woman in sports or any, because people are really aware of that now. They're way more inclusive. They go out of their way to be inclusive, almost like to the point of where it's like, you got to hire the right person for the job. Okay. Because if you're hiring somebody just because she's a woman, then that's like, now you're overdoing it. Now you're like overcompensating for any kind of missed time. So like, I mean, that's important, but I think it's great. So more to come with that, but definitely Bauer and his agent, they're not just friends. It's pretty obvious to me. Okay. So anyway, have a great weekend. Lenny will do his show on Monday, and George will be here tomorrow. I hope that Douglas will do a show soon. I know he's busy doing things right now, but whenever you want to do a show, Douglas, you know how to get on there and do that. So tomorrow, 6:30 for Roto Imbeciles. Monday is Leonard, of course. And everybody, hope you're having good holidays, and see you later. I'm leaving now.